Today's video is really about a couple of things. As some of you already know, my preferred slicer is Slicer, or Slicer Prusa Edition, or as I like to call it, Slic3r. And I only call it Slic3r because I can say Cura, and I can say Slic3r, they're both slicers, no one gets confused. Now I've had a lot of suggestions that I should make videos on how to use Slic3r, and I get a lot of questions about Slic3r. So I thought I'd start with this video. And this video is going to be about custom Gcode placeholders. Now the Gcode placeholder can be used to pull settings out of the slicing profile and then use that in conjunction with Gcode commands to change things during the print. It'll all be baked into one Gcode. And the easiest way for me to show you how to use these is to create a temperature tower. A temperature tower can be used to tune filament. So you can go from one temperature to another layer by layer and then pick which temperature looks best for that filament. And I'm sure this is a little confusing right now, but it'll be a lot better as we walk through it. So let's get into Slic3r and I'll show you how to set these up. So let's start by heading out to Thingiverse and grabbing a temperature tower. I like this one right here because it has bridging as well. So we'll grab these files. Let's extract all. Now they give you a bunch of Gcode you can use, but they also give you the STL files. We just need the STL because we're going to create our own. I'm going to go for the 180 to 220. That'll work for most PLAs. We'll just slide that into Slic3r. There's our temp tower. And I'm going to run this on the Ender3. Now you can use these statements in a few different places inside Slic3r. So if you go to filament settings, you can use it in the custom Gcode there at the start or the end. That will change as you change filament. Or you can use them at the printer level if you go to custom Gcode. You can do the start Gcode, end Gcode, before layer changes, after layer changes. You can do tool change Gcode and between objects in Gcode for sequential printing. I do want to touch on that at a later date. That's pretty cool stuff. But for this type of change, I recommend using before layer change Gcode. So all that's in there by default is a G92E0. That sets the origin. It just resets back to 0. And this layer Z. The layer Z is an example of a custom Gcode placeholder. What this does is adds a comment on every layer change about what layer that you're currently on. So if we were to slice this file right now and take a look at the Gcode, you can see this before layer change comment. There's the G92E0, and then there is the layer height that it reported with that placeholder. So creating the temperature tower, we want to change the temperature at certain layers. So we're going to need to know what layers we want to change at. And the easiest way to do that is to go back to Platter. Since it's already been sliced, we can go to Preview, and then we can scroll through the layers. I'm going to have the temperature change right here, right after it's done with the previous layer's bridging. So I'm going to go all the way down here. There's the last layer of the bridge. Jump up 1. My first change is going to be 7.8. So now that we know that, let's go back to Printer Settings, and we can start building our statements. So to build this statement, we need a curly bracket, and we're going to do if, and we're going to use that layer Z placeholder. Layer underscore Z is equal, two equal signs, to 7.8. That's the layer height we just picked. Another curly bracket, and then we can enter our Gcode command. At that layer height, we're going to jump down to 215 for our temperature. So we'll do M104 to set the extruder temperature, S215. And then we need to end the if statement. So curly bracket, end if, curly bracket, and it's just a good habit to put a semicolon after each line, semicolon. And now we can just do that for every time we want to change layers. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it all the times that I need to do the temp change and change them one by one. So our first change was 215. We'll jump down to 210, 205, 200, 195, 190, 185, and 180. And to find the layer height, we can just repeat this process. So let's go back to Platter. We'll scroll back through the layers until we get to the top of this 215. We're at layer 14.6. Back to Printer Settings, 14.6. We'll repeat that again. Scroll back up till we get to the top of 210. We're at 21.4. Change this one to 21.4. And you get the gist from here. You just keep going through the layers, recording that value, and putting it over your code. So I'll just put all those in now. And there we go. There's all of our temperature changes at layers completed. Now I suggest you save this as a different printer profile so you don't use it for every other print. So let's just hit save. We'll change it to Ender3 Temp Tower. So we're good there. And the very first temperature during this test that we want to do is 220. And I recommend just setting that with the usual slicer filament setting. So just go to filament setting, change these to 220. And then after that initial 7.8 layer height, it'll start taking care of the temperature changes from there. But we want to start at 220 because that's the bottom value. And you can change this filament setting if you like. And that should be all we need to do. So back to platter, we can slice again, and we can export the G-code. And if you take a look at the G-code now, before layer change, you see all these semicolons that we added in there. These are all those placeholder values, but it didn't get triggered on point 2. The first one gets triggered at 7.8. So let's do a find on semicolon 7.8. That's the layer change. You can see the first placeholder was triggered with an M104 S215. And just looking around through Slic3r, you'll see these are used quite a few different places. And there's a bunch of different ones. So if you go to Help, you can go to the Slic3r manual. You can check out all the different placeholders right here. And you can see the temperature chart in Octoprint as it steps through all the different temperatures. And since this is kind of like a temp tower video, we might as well look at the temp tower. This is a great first print to start with when you're dialing in a machine. Get the temperature of your filament right first. And it always helps to start with high-grade filament. This is Filamentum filament. I have the best luck with it all around. So it's going to be pretty hard to tell in the video, but one of the first things you'll notice when you get to lower temps, you're going to get more of a matte finish, and then higher temps, you're going to have more gloss. So that is something to consider when you're dialing in temperature. Also strength. The lower the temp, the layers aren't going to bond as well as the higher temp. But then the higher temp that you go, you're not going to be able to bridge as well at higher temps as lower temp because you want to be able to cool it faster. And stringing can be tricky because some filaments will string less if you cool them off, but some perform better if you heat them up because their retraction is more efficient. But that's more of a retraction topic than it is a temperature test. You're really looking for sheen and strength and bridging quality when you're doing this temperature tower. And all around looking at the bridge and the color, I would say 205 is probably the best. 210's not far behind. If you look at 215 right there, the bridge is starting to droop. That's just a little bit too hot. So all in all, I'd say 205 was the winner here. And that is just one of the many ways that you can use custom G-code placeholders. And if you pair it with conditional statements, it can be a really powerful tool. Now there's a bunch of different placeholders you can use. You can check all those out in the Slic3r manual. Now not everyone is going to need this advanced setting in their slicer. But if you're tuning in a machine and you're doing repetitive prints over and over, this can be a real time saver. I hope you liked this video where we go more in depth on a product. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to my channel. If not, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.